My life's work is advancing women and girls, as you just heard. It's pretty much why I'm on the planet, so my life is simple. I know what's on my tombstone, and I'm just project managing my life backwards. Right now, I feel really lucky because I get to execute my purpose as Chief Leadership Officer at Levo League, which is a destination, both offline and online, for Gen Y women to help them elevate their careers. And I'm really fortunate that I've been able to align my life's work with my career. This is my mom, Brenda, and me when I was just a baby. My mom found out that she was pregnant with me when she was 19 years old. And at that time, she was in Watts, LA. Are any of you familiar with Watts? Well, suffice it to say that in the mid-1970s, Watts was a rough place and it was a rough time. My mom knew when she learned that she was growing this baby in her belly that she wanted to create a different opportunity for her family. I was the first. And she had an uncle who was an Army recruiter. So between her and my uncle, they convinced my dad to join the Army. It was a tough sell. My dad is one of 13 kids. He didn't want to leave his family. But my mom is very persuasive. And I was born 9 months later at Fort Lewis Army Base in Tacoma, Washington. My dad went from early in his life being a heroin addict to eventually earning a PhD in theology. And my parents were able to break a very vicious cycle of poverty and addiction and violence in one generation based off of one fundamental premise, which is that if you want something you've never had before, you're going to have to do something that you've never done before in order to get it. And that's really the most important thing, if you don't take anything from what I say today, that I would love for you to take with you. And my parents were experts at doing different things in order to achieve a different outcome. My journey, like I said before, has really been a quest to figure out how do we get more women into positions of leadership? How do we help women to discover that they're the most powerful change agents in their own journey? And I've done different things. I helped to start a girls' school in Seattle, where I'm from. That's still my heart, Seattle Girls' School. I worked at Simmons College in Boston, which is a great women's college. I eventually ran a women's leadership organization called the White House Project. And now I am at a tech startup, Levo League. I'm also on the launch team for Lean In. So regardless of whether I've been in education or academia or the nonprofit sector or technology, my purpose and my mission has been advancing women and girls. And in fact, I believe that that's one strategy to getting more women into leadership, is to getting more of us aligning our passion and purpose and what's important to us with our livelihoods, because sometimes that's the only thing that makes it worth you, whether you need to leave your dog or your kids in the morning. So when I was growing up, my dad used to have all of these conspiracy theories about how there was this elite group of people that were running the world. And I would be so embarrassed when my friends would come over and he would warn us about these people. I used to think my dad was crazy. Well, over time, I've come to realize and understand that my dad wasn't really crazy at all. In fact, at the highest levels of leadership, there are a small group of people sitting around really big marble tables making decisions that impact every single one of us. And until that group of people is diversified with more women, with more people of color, with more members of our LGBT community, with more people with disabilities, we could go on and on, the biggest crisis that we face is a crisis of leadership. Because it doesn't really matter what issue you care about, whether it's education, whether it's women's leadership, whether it's healthcare, whether it's energy. At the end of the day, there are people making decisions that impact every single one of us. And so I think it's so important that we understand that the case for women's leadership is really a case about developing the most innovative strategies that really will impact all of us, as well as equality and all of that feminist stuff that I'm also really into. So the good news about women in leadership is that we've come a long way, and I'm not going to spend too much time on statistics because I know that some other speakers have done that, but we're essentially graduating from college in higher numbers than we ever have before. We're in the workforce in equal numbers, but we still have a ways to go, and I'm sure that all of you are familiar with these numbers, and if you're not, just very quickly, at the highest levels of leadership in Congress, we still aren't even even at 20%, although we're over half of the population. In corporate America, we're still just a small percentage at the highest levels of leadership. And the biggest question that I often get is, Tiffany, what's going on? What are the barriers to getting more women into leadership? And there are a lot of them. In fact, if I had more time, we would talk all about the external barriers to women leadership. There's culture, there's economic power, there's sexism. Woo, fancy that. We've spent a lot of time really focused on how do we create institutions, how do we shift culture, and create places where women can bring their full selves to the table. A lot of the work that I'm working on now, and whether it's Lean In or whether it's Levo League, is really focused on internal barriers. And some of the controversy, in fact, around some of this work has to do with the fact that we all know that we can't put the cart before the horse, that we still need to work on public policy, we still need to work on culture, we still need to work on institutions. But one of the things that I've learned from training thousands of women to advance their leadership and from coaching women is that we also want to make sure that we're not our own barrier, and that we also address those internal issues. And I want to spend the rest of the time really talking a little bit about what I've discovered as one success equation to advancing your leadership. And this is taken from work training thousands and thousands of Gen Y women to advance their leadership and becoming quite obsessed with why some women are really successful in advancing their leaderships as opposed to others. And so I'm just going to share a little bit about what we've learned. And the first part of that success equation is that women who are really successful advancing their leadership demonstrate particular assets via their mindset, via their behaviors, via their skills. And one of those is what we call self-viability. This is my son, Kofi. He's 7 years old. And not that long ago, Kofi came up to me. He plopped himself down on my lap. He looked at me dead in my face, and he said, "Mom, I can run faster than you." And I kind of giggled just like that, and I said, "No, you can't." I said, "My legs are longer than yours. I've been running longer than you have. I promise you, if we went outside right now and raced, I would beat you, babe." He looked at me, and what do you think he said? "Go outside, Mom. Let's go outside right now," right? And I'm thinking, wow, this is really incredible in the face of even a very powerful argument and logic, right? This kid is raring to go. Now, we think that's very cute now. It's an adorable story. But I want you to fast forward 30 years from now, right? Kofi's 37. He's at Bank of America. He sees a job posting. And on the job posting, there are 10 qualifications that it says you need in order to apply for this job. Right? At the rate that Kofi's going, how many of those qualifications do you think he'll feel he needs in order to apply for that job? 2, maybe. 2 or less. And he'll be like, "Oh, this job's mine." My daughter, on the other hand, I have a 4-year-old daughter. 30 years from now, she's going to see that same job posting. She's going to see those 10 qualifications. My daughter's going to have 8 of them, because we're always qualified. And you know what she's going to do? She's going to call me and she's going to obsess over those 2 that she doesn't have. And she's going to say, "Oh, Mom, I really want to go for this, but I'm not quite sure if they're going to hire me. I don't know if this is the right role for me. There's these 2 qualifications that I really don't have." She's going to think about whether or not she needs to go back to school or get another degree or figure out how she's going to get those 2 qualifications. She hasn't even applied for the job. Okay? What we found is that women who are really successful advancing their leadership perceive themselves as qualified. We usually are anyway. But their psychology is that I am viable to lead, I am qualified to lead, I'm gonna just go for it. And I probably spend most of my time really shifting women's consciousness around their own viability around leadership. One of the other leadership assets that we find women display over and over when they're successful is what we call political savvy. Is anybody familiar with this image? This is, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. This is a Mr. Yuck sticker. This was part of a public health campaign to encourage parents to keep household cleaning products, medications away from their kids. And they doled out these stickers at school and at community centers. And you were encouraged to put this Mr. Yuck sticker on all of those household products to deter your kids. Now, of course, whoever invented this campaign never really had kids, because if you put a bright green sticker on something, it's not necessarily going to deter a child. So I'm not sure how successful this campaign was, but the point being that for the most part, women think politics is really yucky, right? We perceive it as being really yucky. I don't want to get involved. That's really messy. I just want to achieve results. I just want to do my job. I really legitimately believe that I should be rewarded for that. And it's almost a value. Stephen, it's almost an issue around virtues that really deters women. And what we find is that women who are really successful advancing their leadership don't think of politics as yucky at all. They just think of it as part of the natural order of the day. In fact, one of the young women that I interviewed, she said, you know, a lot of my friends say that politics is yucky. They say they don't want to get their hands dirty, but they don't understand. If they're a member of a family, they've been playing politics their entire life. All it is the understanding that every environment you enter is an ecosystem, and that in order to be successful in that ecosystem, you have to understand who people are, you have to understand what motivates them, you have to get to know them. And what's so ironic about women's often feeling of lack and yuckiness around politics is that we really do have a lot of skills and qualities that make us very good at it. And we really are great at motivating and instilling people. So I think it's something that we can shift our mindset around as well. The third asset that I wanted to say something a little bit about is storytelling, because what I was most taken aback by as I was interviewing a lot of these women was how often I didn't want to get off the phone with them, because they were very compelling. And what I found over and over again is that they were very good at weaving their personal narrative into an ask, into motivating people, which really lends itself to the fact that our leadership advancement is not just a singular endeavor. It really is a team sport. And as I was getting off the phone with each one of these women, I was thinking, wow, they're really great coaches, right? I want to invest in them. I want to mentor them. I want to sponsor them. And so really being gifted, and when I say gifted, I don't mean that it's not learned, because you can absolutely learn it, at knowing what your story is and what will compel people to take action is also really important. So that first part of the success equation is really around assets and demonstrating some of these assets, and all of this can be learned. The second piece of the success equation is really around ambition, and if I had more time, I would go into ambition. Please read Anna Feld's Necessary Dreams. It's my favorite book about ambition, and in that book, she defines ambition as the desire to achieve mastery over your craft, combined with the desire to receive public recognition. And she talks about how ambition is tough for women because we have ambivalence about that recognition part, not to our own fault. It's because of the way we're socially conditioned not to want to take credit for anything. When we study these women that have been really successful in advancing their leadership, what we found is that for them, ambition is simply about having clarity around what the next step is. So they don't have to know, one day I'm going to be the CEO, or one day I'm going to be a senator. They just need to know what the next step is in order to help them on their journey. It might be, I really need to get to know this particular person. It might be, I really need to serve on this committee. I really need to volunteer for this particular project. I really need to get involved with this organization. Over and over again, what we find is that the people who just know what the next step is are much more successful at staying on a particular trajectory no matter what it is. And if you've ever had someone who's asked to take you to coffee or lunch because they want to pick your brain or because they want to get help with something, and they don't have clarity or they don't have a specific ask for you, you understand the importance. And it's very easy to see how women who are really clear about the next step kind of shoot forward faster, because I can't tell you how many times I've had a meeting with a woman that I absolutely adored. She seemed to be dynamic, have lots of energy. I wanted to help, but I didn't know how, because she didn't know what she was coming to me for, and she didn't know her next step. So that's the second part of the success equation, and it's what we refer to as ambition. The third part of the success equation is really around access. And here I want to focus on access to people, because it's so important that we all understand that we can't do this alone. These are some of the people who have made an investment in my leadership. Marie Wilson, who founded the White House Project, which is the organization that I ran, is right next to me. Gloria Steinem, Janice Rills-Ellig, Davia Temin. This is Deval Patrick, who I learned a ton from when I was in Boston. He's the governor of Massachusetts. Gina Davis and Susan Taylor used to serve on the board of the White House Project. And I show these images because I want people to always know that the person that you see here on this stage is only the cumulative investment of a lot of other people. I'm only the cumulative investment of all of these people. And if we can shift our mindset from, I have to put my head down and I have to do all of this and I have to do all of this by myself, to the world is full of abundance. And there are many people who are here to help me achieve clarity through guidance and encouragement, and I have access to them, and they're available to me. And if I can engage them in a meaningful way, they will help me, but more importantly, I will help them. All of these people would say, I think it's fantastic, and I love that I get to take credit for Tiffany Dufu, which is really a beautiful thing. At Levo League, one of the things that we're doing is trying to democratize mentorship and sponsorship. And so we're using technology in order to provide young women access to individuals that they wouldn't normally have access to. So feel free to go to levoleague.com. You can ask questions on our dashboard of everyone from Sheryl Sandberg to Warren Buffett. There are really great people who are there because they want to make an investment in the next generation. It's Levo, L-E-V-O, League, as in a league of their own.com. Levo is the root Latin for elevate. We elevate women. Many people ask, what does Levo mean? That's what it means. So this is just a summary of the success equation. We all need to have the assets that we need to be successful, the ambition, the access to people. And the last thing that I just want to leave you with is this quote that I started, that if you want something you've never had before, you'll have to do something that you've never done before in order to get it. And for all of us to think about what we can do that we've never done before in order to advance our own leadership, but most importantly, to advance the leadership of all women. And I thank you so much for your time.